Welcome to the Middle East Teaching and Learning Conference. My name's Olly Lewis. I am an assistant head at the British International School of Abu Dhabi, responsible for digital learning, and I also head up the science department. You can find me on Twitter at olewis_coaching. I'm also the co-founder and co-host of Learn Live UAE, which is a weekly chat which we stream on YouTube Monday nights at 8 p.m. Season 2 starts quite soon, and very occasionally, when time allows, I blog. Website's ollylewislearning.com. I thought I would reflect a little bit, share one or two findings from some recent reading on the topic of enhanced school-wide learning. I know in the current situation that we find ourselves in, we've kind of ripped up the playbook a little bit, and I think that's a good thing when it comes to the opportunities that we've now got through learning on a school-wide level. So as a leader, it's really important, as well as a teacher, in fact, to simply just know your starting point. And it might be identifying a problem or an issue of interest to you within your teams or your schools, and then start to develop a research question that's specific to that particular area within your school, and search for some literature that you can read around that particular area of interest, so that you can help review or alter your research question around the thing that you're trying to improve in light of reading that literature. That then will enable you to define a kind of research methodology and consider any dimensions within your school. Maybe it's kind of ethical bias or data collection issues that you might face, and identify a methodology that you can work around to solve and go about improving your problem. It's important then to think about the kind of cycle between cause and effect, and whilst we're doing this, are you going to adopt an all-in or an all-out approach? We know that learning and teaching are complex situations with so many different variables and interconnected parts, that it's really important that we look at the relationship between cause and effect, and we approach it with the 3 C's. Really clear communication. We talk about why we're doing what we're doing and what we're going to do about it. We collaborate and we help to encourage growth, break down any silos that we might have, and actually make that the language of learning amongst professional colleagues, that we want to work together to solve problems and improve ourselves, not only as a school, but professionally as well. And then the final C is commit. We need to model the behaviours we want to see. We need to be persistent. We need to adapt when the situation calls for it, remain positive, and crucially, we need to be patient, because change doesn't happen overnight. It takes time for something to become a habit and change our ways of working. So in terms of professional learning then, I think that it's key that we identify how not to do it. And that's the kind of baseball hat approach, where one size fits all. And it's fairly obvious that one size does not fit all. Everyone's at different stages in their career. Everyone has different experiences of teaching and teach different subjects. It's such a broad and diverse, rich picture of teachers within a school, that we shouldn't really approach it like this, kind of the Amazon box method, where your professional development is just all staff and one hit, and everyone gets the same box. Because we often hear about this approach, and I've seen it in previous schools, how it doesn't really work. It doesn't lead to that sustained, long-term, satisfying professional development. It leads to this kind of idealized way of, or model of teaching. And whilst every box appears the same, once we open the box, it's a bit like Pandora's box, how that information, that learning has been interpreted, and then how it will be implemented can be vastly different. And that isn't necessarily what we're looking for, I don't think, in schools. What we need to come back to then, and this has been talked about so much recently in education, is this idea of novices and experts. And we know that teachers pretty naturally have a love for learning. So why not promote that love of learning together within an organisation, within a region, and then globally across our profession, and come back to, our core business, which is the love of our subjects, and passing that on to future generations. So if we come to this idea then of novices and experts, quite often it comes down to this idea here, which is the idea of perception, and perception matters, and quite often people's perception of themselves are very different to what other people's perceptions of that person are. But perception does matter, and we know that learning is complex, and professional development is also complex. And as a scientist, a favourite quote of mine, which I don't often share, is just science is nothing but perception. It's how we perceive the world around us. So in terms of expert teachers then, what do? Well, they act slightly differently. They focus on learning, and thanks to their rich wealth of experience across likely multiple classrooms and contexts, they're able to adapt faster, and see, anticipate the moment and seize that particular moment in the learning journey. And that enables them to be more flexible, and likely they'll ask better questions of the student to really drill down into the material and make more links, provide more links to the students. Because of that rich experience, they have this hugely rich and diverse mental model in their head of the curriculum that they're teaching. So it enables those teachers to be more automatic, and thanks to their ability to anticipate, act, and adapt really quickly and efficiently to the learners that are in front of them, to make the most of the situation. And I think, how can we tap into that and harness this with professional development? Well, I think reflection is essential to this, and we need to approach ourselves and our colleagues with this love and growth and opportunity for capacity and reflection with expertise, and really show value in our staff and the variation of staff that we have, and their rich, rewarding experiences and occurrences that they have passed through in their career to date. And the more that we can provide that platform for teachers to share, I think we can actually start to move everybody more towards this expert end. We can draw on that wealth of knowledge and experience and share that amongst ourselves. That will enable more staff to enact that within their classroom, and improve their strategy selection, and become a part of the culture of the school. But I think it's still important that we measure, and that's not to say observations are important, but I think talking about pedagogy, talking about teaching, talking about research, talking about blogs or videos you've seen, I think are important. And that's been highlighted by people before. Murphy in 2007 talked about when leading learning, stay focused on the three big things, which is learning, teaching, and assessment, and you won't go too far wrong. More recently, Mary Kennedy wrote a piece about learning about teacher learning just last year, and this really resonated with me. Talked about the importance of coaching, so drawing on that rich experience and sharing that knowledge amongst your staff body is really, really important. She also talked about the need to be flexible and adaptable and provide that variation for teachers so that they can grow as well. And within that, it needs to be contextualized. What works in one school might not work in another school. But I think what's important to kind of identify with these first three strands here is developing a kind of strategy and insight into the myriad of decisions that teachers make, so that we can not only understand student learning better, but also improve our responses toward student actions, as well as clearer explanations to students on a kind of subject-specific knowledge basis. And that's where she goes next. She talks about the importance of curriculum knowledge and having that deep subject-specific knowledge to call upon, so that we've got that content knowledge there, and we don't kind of make we can reduce attribution errors. I think that's really important. And the final thing she talked about was focus on what you can improve, and I think that really resonates, certainly in the current context and current climate. Whilst we haven't been face to face for 4 or 5 months, and moving back to going face to face fairly soon, I think it's key that we rethink how professional development can occur within our schools, thinking about these 5 key points here. This has been backed up again by this recent evidence review published by Evidence-Based Education, along with Cambridge Assessment, the Great Teaching Toolkit, and they distilled lots of research down into kind of 4 key areas. About you can see them color coded here if you read through the document. It's a really good read. I'd thoroughly recommend it. They talk about understand the content, so have that fantastic subject knowledge across your curriculum. The green, number 2, create a supportive environment. So have that promotion of long-term learning, and the culture of professional development across your school is really important. Bullet points 3 and 4 then, maximising opportunity to learn and activating hard thinking, come down to, for me, the first 3 things that Kennedy talked about, which was coaching, flexible, and can't remember the third one now, jump back, contextualised. So I think it's about knowing your learners, knowing your subject matter really well, and then being able to make better decisions and react to those particular learners that are in front of you, so that you become more automatic. You can anticipate and act quicker and be more efficient within the classroom, and that is moving towards becoming an expert within teaching. The same document then goes on a little bit further, and it talks about professional growth for teachers. And I think it raised these 3 really brilliant points within there. It talks about a personalised curriculum for teacher learning, and I think that's key. And it comes back to that idea of not having that Amazon box approach, or the baseball hat approach, where you have one size fits all, because everyone teaches a different phase, stage, subject pretty much. So I think it's important that we tailor our teacher learning to the specific needs of the individual teachers. It also talks about the importance of feedback, and feedback being formative and actionable. And I think that's highly important, because teachers need to know the journey that they're going on. They need to be able to evaluate their progress as well as their impact, and track the journey that they've gone on, and see how they've grown and feel fulfilled. You would hope, throughout their learning. And the final point here that they made in the document is that networks are really important, and I would thoroughly support this idea. It's all about drawing on that collective experience to find effective ways to drive learning and teaching, and sharing is a big part of that. And I think this is a great opportunity to start to foster more professional partnerships. We're very good at doing it with our colleagues within our own particular school building, but now's a great time to actually foster professional partnerships across schools. I'm very lucky that I work in an organisation that has kind of 66 schools across the world, so we can draw on that expertise. But that's not the case for every school. There's now the UAE Research Schools Network, a network of 4 schools across Abu Dhabi and Dubai that have this professional partnership. And I think that's a fantastic thing for us to now invest in. And it really highlights the important nature of growing, on an individual level, but on a regional scale as well, and thinking bigger picture, because it's important what we do. We've got the most important job in the world. The third professional partnership to consider is your links with universities. Quite often we don't think about our links with universities until we're talking about the sixth form and A-levels and IB. But actually, why can't we make professional partnerships with some of the lecturers there and work with teachers to discuss education and pedagogy and professional learning and share our expertise in both domains, as well as with researchers. And I think that if we can adopt this kind of coaching professional culture across these different areas within schools and higher education institutions, as well as amongst ourselves, I think that in terms of growing professionally, that's going to be fantastically rewarding for us in terms of enabling us to not only grow, but move more towards becoming expert teachers within our subject domains. We know also from the work of Hattie, the single most powerful modification that enhances achievement is feedback. So why not within those 4 areas of colleagues, schools, universities, and researchers, provide feedback routes with one another when discussing pedagogy, teaching and learning, and actually have other colleagues from other schools or universities or researchers come and deliver professional learning and sharing that experience with one another. We know that feedback, as well as self-regulation, metacognition, and reflection, are 2 of the most impactful processes that we can go through thanks to the Teaching and Learning Toolkit from the Education Endowment Foundation. And I think that still stands for us as teachers with our own professional learning. Michael Fullan talks about pedagogy being the driver and technology being the accelerator. And I think the position that we have globally found ourselves in over the past 4 months has been difficult for many, but provided us with this new view of how we can use technology. And I think now is a fantastic opportunity for us to diversify our professional learning thanks to using technology. And I think once we go back to school in September, it's going to be very difficult, if nigh on impossible, to get all of the teachers in one room at the same time. However, we can now, thanks to the use of technology, make that a possibility and actually draw on teacher experience over the last 4 or 5 months. And many teachers have upskilled themselves really quickly in ways that they might not have thought possible. So tapping into and harnessing that learning is I think, a key ingredient to helping drive pedagogy using technology or not using technology in the coming year. So rather than putting on these whole school sessions, now is a really good time to actually diversify and put on a multitude of sessions which teachers can then choose based on their needs at their specific point in time. And it might be that many of those sessions actually move to becoming subject-specific sessions. And it's really important that we make the time for that. And that's not to say it's just a department meeting. it shouldn't be that. It should be somebody in the department leading on something, subject knowledge based within that subject. So I think conveying that to middle leaders is really important, that meeting time should also be at least 50% professional development time. And over the past 4 months, we haven't had as many meetings as we might have done had we been face to face. And I think technology has been a great driver for that. So now we should, I think, continue on that journey and actually push professional development more than potentially it has been in the past. And with that in mind, talking a lot about the EEF today, their foundations for a good implementation. On the screen here, you can see their summary of recommendations if you search for it on their website. They talk about the importance of implementation being a process. It's not a one-off event. It has to be conducted in stages, creating that kind of climate that's conducive for good implementation. You need to cultivate it, and that's our job as leaders, senior and middle leaders, to cultivate that and build capacity throughout teams across the school, so that they have the opportunity to explore, prepare, deliver, and sustain. And point 4, prepare, talks about innovation, but innovation means very different things in different contexts. So it comes to knowing your starting point and actually being able to build on that. And I think the use of technology in recent months has been innovative in lots of schools, but now would be a good time come September to reevaluate that and think, how are we going to grow our professional learning, and how can technology enable us to do that within our schools? Sustainability then is going to be really key, thinking about preparing and delivering that professional learning, but it has to be sustainable. And that quite often is a problem in schools, but building that time in and using technology to our advantage should help facilitate that now, because we can't all be in the same location at once. We can still, from the comfort of our own home, access professional learning at a time that suits us. So, changing the way that we work, in theory, has never been easier because we are forced to do so. Something else which we do at BISAD is we run something called a collaborative school-based inquiry, and over the course of 4 months, teachers conduct a small action research project in small groups, and then they share that action research with teachers across the school. It's been some of the best professional learning I've attended. I think it's fantastic to see teachers owning and leading their own action research projects. This year, you can see Matt Clark, who's head of science in the school in Muscat, and Nigel Davis, who's deputy head BSAC, came along, as well as teachers from 3 other schools, and shared some professional learning from their schools. And I think that if we can keep fostering this collaborative approach to help make us more evidence-informed through expertise and sharing, I think that's a fantastic thing to help grow our own knowledge, our own professional learning across our profession. Other things that we could do that we might not necessarily always transfer to when we get to school is, the rise of professional learning through things like YouTube. I host with a friend of mine, Mark Anderson, Learn Live UAE, Monday nights at 8 p.m. You can tune into that. We have teachers from all across the Middle East talking about all sorts of different topics, or Research Ed Home. So I think we're in a great position now where we can harness, the use of multimedia. So it might be Twitter chats or online conferences or online magazines like Teach Middle East magazine, or the Chartered College of Teaching's Impact magazine, all these different, or the Bioracy hub that's starting up. So in all these different multimedia methods for professional learning that aren't necessarily traditional methods of learning can still permeate into our meetings and our professional development in schools, so that we can share that information amongst ourselves. Because as we communicate and collaborate with one another, we grow ourselves and those around us, and we grow capacity for learning. And I think that the more we can change that kind of traditional one-size-fits-all approach to something that's more in tune to each individual and draw on different areas of information, whether they be online or within our school, I think the better for our own professional learning. So I would urge you in your schools to think about your professional learning for the teachers in your community, and think about how you can adapt what you're doing to incorporate lots of other different streams of information to make it a more personal experience for each individual. Thank you for listening.